I don't know, I think this will work. As long as it's the same as the other side.
Rivers winding round words in my head. Shivering pines say that summer is dead. Chest feels hollow and my hands are numb. Do my best to swallow all the things I've done. You break your back, but
What's up guys, Jordan from Bennett's Customs. We are back on another episode shopping that 1932 two-door sedan. Be sure to check our previous episode where we do all the layout and prep work in order to get that thing chopped. And in this video, we are taking it off. We're taking a section out. Scotsman's busy working on the Arden mock-up head, beautifully traditional sand bent exhaust. It's kind of all go the last few days in the workshop. So we got lots to cover in this episode. So let's get straight into it right now.
trust a man cause he'll just let you down. Crooked and twisted we grow from the ground. From dust we came in, dust we shall return. From dust we came in, dust we shall return. Wash me in the water and I'll never go back. Even when I'm walking through dead man paths. Walking through dead man paths. Wash me in the water and I'll never go back. Even when I'm walking through dead man paths.
All right, well, I've gone through, I've cut the A pillars, the B pillars, these sections out on the side of the rear quarters, and then the bottom of the window. So everything is cut off. You can see it's like that. I am using a grinder. You could use a hacksaw, you could use a Sawzall, you could use an air grinder, but I'm just confident in using it. We're actually ready to take this off and put it in front of the car, and then we can go through and then cut these pieces off. So some guys like to take the whole thing off and then they flip the roof, put it down on a stand, and then they can take their time and cut the rest. But I kind of like to have it on there, the bones of the car itself, and then we can strip through there and rip it off. So let's do that. Then we can get the A pillars, B pillars, and the back bits cut. Then we can bring it back over, and we're just going to we'll leave a door, and what we can do is shut the door and kind of show you, where we're kind of at. So I think it'd be kind of cool to do that. So I'm going to get Ben to help me, or the wee Scotsman if he can reach this high, and we'll get it off. Wow. All right, well, we're not here to fuck spiders. Let's get rid of these and see what happens. With that
here.
Hold on. All right. Needs to come to me. Can that go forward at all? I could just clamp this side and we could just kind of play with it, but holy cow, that looks freaking pretty good.
Even just like that, it changes there. You've got a couple of tabs on the back, just got that moving forward.
Now I'll just get a visual. Like that.
There's too much job done and got a fault off here.
Yeah, okay.
You're pretty clean with there. These are a lot for the back.
Wow, that looks so sick. So I just needed that because so it's 3.5 in the rear and 3 inches in the front. So I'm just gonna have to play around with that rear just a little bit, I reckon. So that so it's just 3 inches at the front.
I wouldn't have gone anywhere, but
Nah, I reckon that's like a nice amount, eh? Rear window. That in like that. Oh. So I could take just a little bit out of it to get it to sit up to there. So it'd be about if I welded it back to where we took it out, be about 1 inch I could take out of that. See, that now matches like a little bit better, eh? What's that back 3/4 look like? That's the key. Oh yeah, fuck, that's so sick.
the money shot here.
Oh yeah. So if I were to pull this rear piece off, and then grab the other. Yeah, it's a lot, eh? I reckon it could. Like if you put that on the outside of that.
That B pillar would be cock on, like.
Or do you want to put this on the outside?
That's what I'm thinking, like. This will be 5 mil is what I do. Do the inside of it, I think.
Let's take it so we can lift it. That pretty close? Yeah. The only thing so say we did that way. You have a line right here, right? And then that slides down. But if you go back, that is going to be a big gap. So like I'd have to just make a big square and then weld it in. Yeah. But you're right, it could have still worked.
So what have we got? It's the fucking.
The proportions are spot on though.
Fucking chop.
I definitely think it's, yeah, two-door sedan, a little bit more in the back than the front. So it just sort of lays it out a bit more. Because if I,
Half an inch does, eh? You'd never,
if I lift this up,
never think half an inch.
did that do much? Yeah, here we are, actually. Looks like he's just at the Swiss Alps. We've rolled it back probably in and out multiple times, probably a dozen times, just to get the profile. It really makes a difference when you lower it, say, 1/4 of an inch in the back or raise it up, and there's a lot of fine tweaking. So to get that outside and get a big visual makes a huge difference. You don't want like clutter and stuff behind it because it really hinders the perspective of the car. You really want to make sure you have a complete open canvas, as we call it. So I've rolled it back in. That dent that you guys have probably watched in the previous video, it was bothering me, and it was actually because of where it had hit. It kind of had sort of misaligned the hinges just slightly, just enough to make it not line up here properly. So I ended up pulling the door off. I drilled all the spot rivets out to remove the actual panel, the inner panel that holds your door latch and window mechanism, to be able to get to the back of that, and then I was able to just hammer and dolly it out. It's still not perfect, but I was able to get it out, and it's kind of back to its natural state. Again, that big massive one at the bottom here too, we were able to get that out without taking too much of the inner structure of the door out. So now it's a little bit easier to work with. We don't have the really big kind of, this part here was actually quite pinched, so nothing was really lining up that well. So I just wanted to rectify those issues. I think hindsight, like if you are going to be doing a chop, doing the initial repairs prior to chopping it is obviously like, it's probably a good thing to do. But at the same time, we kind of realized what we were working with for the floor section, knowing that there was barely anything there. But after doing the measurements and knowing that everything, was sitting in position where it should, that's why I kind of went with let's chop it first, then we'll do the floor section, because I know that once we've chopped this and welded it all back together, the integrity of the body will be back to sort of its initial state, less the amount we've taken out of it. And then we can kind of tackle the floor when we get there. So anyways, back to kind of what we're trying to do here. I had a little bit of work to do on the A-pillars. This one, where this had made contact had kind of tweaked this A-pillar. It was about 1/4 of an inch different to the other one. So I just wanted to make sure everything was sort of sitting where it is, and I've taken the roof off, put it on the floor about 4 or 5 times, just sort of running around and kind of feathering certain areas where I just want it to sit a little bit better. So moving forward, what I want to do is pull this back off, and I'm just going to work on the B-pillar section. So this fits quite nicely where it is. You guys have also may have noticed that when it's outside, because of the way that your bracket for the windshield post or your flip out windshield goes, the bracket for that and also the upper hinge section, there's only about 3 inches that you can take out of it. So I actually, I anticipated, hey, we're going to do 3.5 inches out of the A pillar, the B pillar, and the back rear quarter section. That is not the case anymore. We've actually done 3 inches. That's kind of max I can get out of this without really having to cut the top of the cowl and do some like major kind of fitment in order to lay the windshield back. Again, having to remove where the original windshield will sit, and a lot of that stuff. So I didn't really want to get too involved in that. I wanted to keep this area quite simple, and then, you know, kind of work to the back. So it's now going to be 3 inches in the front. This section is still 3.5. And then in the back is actually going to be a little bit more. So it's probably going to be like maybe 3 and 3.75, or almost closer to 4 inches. So you can see that this is actually sitting about maybe 3/8 of an inch down. And what I'm trying to do is, usually when you if you evenly go through this whole thing and you go to put it back on, a two-door sedan naturally has a bit of high shoulders. So when you chop it, you sort of emphasize those high shoulders. So unless you're trying to make like, you know, a body that kind of comes big to small and sort of narrowed front, I kind of want to relax those shoulders a bit. And what I mean is, this section will actually sit just a little bit lower. So we're kind of doing like an opposite chop. So we're doing less in the front, more in the back, just to get these guys down just a little bit more, just to get the profile a little bit better. So that once we lower this and modify the cross member and get everything down and get this 750, you know, with a really nice profile along this wheel well, the front section will get the drop axle and everything, and it'll still have that narrowed big and little look, but it just won't have the real high shoulders. So I think it'll just make a little bit better profile, and it'll be real subtle. You won't notice it too much. But again, from the previous video, you know, we had a lot of guys obviously explaining how they didn't want us to chop it, or they didn't want to see a big extreme chop. This is a very conservative chop, technically. We could go a ton more. If it was mine, personally, I'd be taking another probably 2-3 inches out of it. But in order to, you know, kind of follow the legalities that we need here, you know, this is kind of where we're at. So I think once it's actually done, it's going to be really nice. You'll notice it, but to the trained eye, you will. But to, you know, just your kind of average guy that likes his cars that might not, you know the exact profiles of these, they might actually just kind of look past it and go like, oh, that's not really sure if that's chopped or not. So I think it'd be kind of cool. It might play with your eyes a little bit. But anyways, let's get this back off. Let's play around with these B-pillars a bit more, and then we're going to get it back on, set into place, and do a bit more fine tuning. In the back section here, you'll notice where this is sitting. I've actually taken an inch out of this rear window section. So you remember when I cut this piece out, we removed it, then we cut through, we've chopped it. I got just 2 clecos kind of holding it in position where I kind of like it. And then what I've done is just taken another inch out of this. So this rear window from factory will only be shortened 1 inch, whereas everything else will be, you know, that 3 to 3.5 inches. But I didn't really want to have a real tiny mail slot window on this. I still want you to be able to see out of it, as well as just proportionally, it does look quite nice with the kind of the rear quarters, and then you kind of have a nice smaller window in the back. So I didn't want to take too much out. 1 inch was maybe almost could have gone with just like 3/4 of an inch, but I think this will look really good. I probably should have taken it out of the top here where this kind of comes down, and it would have met this. We're actually a little bit short on either side. So what I'll do is I'll just run the saw just up a little bit up here, and we'll just naturally be able to just pull this out about, you know, 1 mil, 2 mil, to make sure that they meet and keep that profile consistent, and then we can just weld that up. So I'm going to be speaking a lot in like inches and the metric system, because I'm just used to chopping cars sort of in inches. I think everyone kind of relates to it a little bit easier, but then I'll also be measuring in metric too. So excuse me, but I'm just a bit of a mix because, you know, grew up with it. Now I'm learning the metric system. Metric system is a lot better technically. But yeah, anyways, so don't get too confused by my babbling on. But let's get this roof off. Let's rectify and play with the quarter panels here, and then we can get this thing sat back on. All right, rolling back. silly mock-ups. Oh yeah, you can if you need to. They're on the inside, so they're not connected to the roof, but let's just take them off anyway, just make it easier. Yeah. Nice looking roof. Big sunroof. It's even bigger now. Big boy. All right. So I need to, so these bits here are the inner structure for the B pillar. So this sits in, like, you know, you can imagine where it would have sat originally. And then this piece, these two holes, there's the timber actually mounts to this. So I need to make sure that these go in the exact position of where they originally were to where they are now. So obviously this depth or size is narrower than where it was because they're slightly tapered. So I need to take that into consideration when we go to weld these. But the biggest thing is getting these to sit where they need to, welded into place so that when we go to put the actual roof with the B pillar, that will line up to our skin so that it's essentially like double welded. So we're trying to make sure that it's structural, obviously. We don't want to just kind of put that on and then just weld the outside and have no weld on the inside. So these are going to get sort of set up in position where they need to be, both sides. So I'm just going to wire wheel and clean them all out, clean the edges where we're going to actually weld them. And then what I'll do is I'll end up doing a few measurements on both sides to make sure that they are exact. Then we can manipulate or modify the actual roof itself where they're going to line up. So these are very important to make sure that they are where they're supposed to be so that everything will then fix to it and line up properly. So I want that wood kit to be able to go back in the exact same way it came out, less all billion toenails that I had to pull out. So
Come all you young rounders, and a story I'll tell, the promise of heaven and the warning of hell. But take heed where you ramble, or too soon you will go. Way up on the hillside where the new flowers grow. Well, they met in the springtime, the sun sinking low. Two star-crossed lovers in the still melting snow, where the loving was easy and the courting was brief. Well, they called her a beauty, they called him a thief. In the quiet of the evening, they'd steal away, where the laughter would flow and the fiddle would play. Well, the folks called it wrong, but hell, it seemed alright. In the sun-painted picture, and the day turned to night. Come up on the hillside, we'll have a time. If you'll bring the kisses, honey, I'll bring the wine. Keep your heart guarded, or too soon it'll fall. When one walks back home, honey, only one knows it all. Well, she walked up the hillside alone one day, and the heart is a hunter always knows of its prey. And her father's old pistol hanging loose by her side. When she aimed once, she never shot twice.
All right, so we've flipped the roof over, and I've just been cleaning and prepping all the areas where we obviously want it to weld, and a few areas that we need to manipulate. And this is sort of the handbrake that happens when you're dealing with a car that definitely has a fair amount of rust in it. Is we've found a fair bit of rust in the top header panel. So this is where the windshield would sit, and it pivots right here on these hinges. And we have a lovely amount of rust that we need to repair. So it's on both sides. This back bit I haven't touched yet with the wire wheel. The wire wheel can be quite aggressive, but I like it because it's aggressive enough where it'll kind of rip the thin metal and sort of show you where it is. I would love to just weld this on and sort of, get the profile right, but I do not want to have to do this rust repair after it's welded on. That just, to me, doesn't make any sense. At least it's at a comfortable working height now. I can be, we can put it on the table. I can cut this out. It looks like there's about 3 different pieces to it that will need to be done. So I need to remove kind of everything that's on this header panel, drill out the spot welds, and do it properly. There's not really any other way of doing it. So it needs to be done right. And doing it right is to cut this out, make the exact same filler, and weld a new piece, making sure that it's going to be, obviously watertight, structural, and we have a good base to be able to put the roof back on. So that's going to happen. Before that is going to happen though, I want to still be able to flip this over, mock up our rear section and our B-pillars to make sure everything's kind of where we want it prior to cutting this out. Then we can get an overall idea of where everything's going to sit. I would love to trim and at least just mock up one of the sides of our doors just to see how it's going to fit in there. And then that's visually going to give us a better profile once we have that header panel on there. So I'm going to do that, and then we may roll it outside and just kind of have a look, see what it's going to look like with the kind of new fine-tuned chop that we've done for it. So that's what we're going to do now. Flip this over and see how it's going to fit. It's outside now, and visually it's just nice to see it sort of, without anything. It just gives it a bit of breathing room. But as you can see, we've just loosely mocked up the upper part of the door frame. I just wanted to see it in there because, it adds a fair amount of, kind of finishes this top part off. So it really gives you the look for the chop itself. And then in the back, we've just kind of put a bit of tape just to sort of hold it without any clamps, and that's just given us a visual. So with it on now that the B-pillars are kind of situated where they need to be, at least we can kind of get everything to mock up really nicely. Everything lines up really well along the back portion into this area here. We got a little bit of work to do, but that's why we took that nice big piece out there so that we can put that piece back in. This is going to be very important to make sure that it's consistent on both sides, along with doing the door frame. So, a lot of guys, when they do chop, they go and they actually chop the door frames first, then they do the roof. So they kind of finish this section off where they want it, get the profile right, and then the roof kind of falls on there. So I'm doing it kind of that way, but sort of not. And, I'm kind of bouncing around. I just really want these B-pillars to kind of be where they are and get this door line correct. And then because we are running, it's essentially like a 1-inch chop difference, almost 1 inch, which is kind of big. So it's about 75 mil in the front and 100 mil in the rear. So you can imagine that's a fair bit. Or, you know, we could go 3 inches and 4 inches is essentially what we're after. So we've laid it right back. So you can imagine, again, when we get the wheel to fit in here and everything's kind of down, these shoulders are going to be a little bit more relaxed. It's not going to be so hunched up like a two-door usually is. This area is really big on them and it can be quite bulky. So we're just trying to thin this down a little bit and sort of complement the rest of the lines of the body. And I got a few ideas for the front portion with the frame horns and stuff too. So, but initially, you know, like standing back, seeing the visual, I would say it's more on the conservative side of chops that I usually like to do. But having said that, I think it's definitely really nice. And, you know, hopefully kind of convince a few of the guys that were definitely the no-sos on the chop that, hey, look, you know, we still haven't done anything bad visually. We've just kind of given it a little bit more attitude. And it's going to look really neat once we kind of get this A-pillar set up and this laid back a little bit more. We're going to have some really nice style points through there. So I'm really thrilled with it. I think it looks awesome. Again, this is my first 32 two-door sedan that I've ever chopped. So a little bit of a learning experience, but also, you know, super fun to do. So I think, you know, moving forward into the next few episodes on this chop, I am going to, you know, rectify the issue on that header panel. So I'm going to fix all the rust. There is quite a complex couple of pieces. So I'll end up, you know, we'll probably do a bit of a video on that part, get that whole header panel nice and clean and rust free. And then once that's done, then we can actually go fit this down into position, start to get it welded up, get our door frames corrected and where we want them. I will end up doing a like little small plywood or using that 48-ounce straw board to do a window insert for both sides to make sure that they are identical. And again, with our rear quarter windows, I'll do the exact same. So we'll trace out a bit of cardboard or ply, have it for both sides to make sure that they are going to be identical both sides. But yeah, I mean, visually, I don't think you can beat it. I think it looks really good. And it's sort of right in that mix of like, it's not too heavily chopped. Again, with the front windshield, having those pieces back on there and the windshield actually fitted in place, that's gonna kind of bulk this up a bit. So it will make this look a little bit narrower than it does. But I'm pumped. I think it looks really, really good. And the back window, having that little, you know, that 1-inch trim out, just definitely gives it a little bit more attitude, but doesn't make it a total mail slot window. You know, really just sort of complements the rest of the car. But I think that's the whole thing with these. It's just massively trying to nail the visual aspect of it and keeping those body lines sort of balanced, and, you know, keeping the flow of the entire car. So I think if Henry Ford were to run another series of 32 two-door sedans, maybe this chop would be one that he'd you know, be using as his base point to bring him out. But anyways, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this so far, and there's going to be a lot more involved into actually getting the roof stuck on and welded into place, and lots of really neat bits. This one's going to be quite exciting and fun to create here to make sure we have that nice balance. But yeah, hopefully you guys are enjoying this, and there's much more to come on this project itself. But yeah, be sure to like, subscribe, hit notifications, and we will see you next week on Bennett's Customs. See you guys.